took the idea that a lot of classes in biology, this was done by Hollowell, and they wanted to do a longitudinal study, so they chose 3 classes and they studied those over 3 years to integrate lab components that utilize real-world skills and real-world situations, particularly in some biological engineering classes. So they did things like encourage student-led research. They gave the students a problem along the lines of, you have this outbreak now, how are you going to handle correcting it? And they had the students to think through those scenarios in their labs. The conclusion was that inquiry was better than lecture for concept retention and also for scientific literacy, which is important when you start to think about higher level science classes, especially for informations majors like the computational biology majors. And then I looked at Twitter and how we could use Twitter in the classroom along with all these real world connections, because so many of the students now are connected to their phones. And everybody wants to use their phones. In fact, a lot of people use their phones while they're going in class or while they're in their presentations. So Skiba was a nursing instructor, and she viewed Twitter as up and coming. She wrote this article in 2008, so it is a little bit dated. But she saw Twitter as important in education because it keeps up with technology, and you don't have to write a thesis or you don't have to write a big long post. You can share a little bit of knowledge because it is limited to 140 characters. However, the problem with her article was that she didn't have any real data to back it up. It was all theoretical in approach. It was not a study, and she didn't. She gave all these scenarios for how you could use it, and she even gave some examples of how you could use it, but she didn't give any, I'm putting this into practice in my classroom and this is how I'm doing it. She is a nursing instructor though, so I kind of feel like she probably is using it in her classroom, but she didn't make that clear in that particular article. So then I wanted to see, well, if we're using Twitter, can we use other social media? And Damazi said that learning, if you foster learning in a community, students needed encouragement at times from the instructor to keep the discussions going, but she did a lot of hers through Twitter as well as through a Facebook group. And the learning community engaged the students because they could respond to things that each other found interesting, or because they found problems and they could kind of help each other out. C did a study and believes that Facebook or YouTube is a better fit for students than Twitter was. But the study populations were a little bit skewed, so the Facebook group and the YouTube group had more participants than the Twitter group did. But he also found that the health literacy scores, which is what he was testing, were improved after the sharing on social media and sharing all of those experiences. He was using teenagers in this study, and they were showing them videos or clips about different health issues and then testing them on that. Stevens believes that you have to kind of train students how to use these social media in this in an educational way, and then you have to encourage them. And he said that in his study, students were divided into 2 groups, and one group got tweets and Facebook posts about how to encourage victims to come forward and how to handle victims in different trauma-type situations. Again, this was done with nursing students. And the other group just got random tweets that were like, hey, remember you have a test on Friday, or the pneumatic for remembering the cranial nerves is, and it would list it. And the students found those tweets as helpful as they found the content or the victim tweets. But there were a low number of people in student study that actually self-reported, so that data may be slightly skewed. Another concern that I have in developing this curriculum, not only from reaching this generation of social media, but goes back to, I love my sister very much, but we don't know how she fits in the rest of our family because she's not a science major like the rest of us are. And I remember having a very long discussion with her because we went to the same university, and I was telling her who not to take in the biology department because she had to take a science course to satisfy her fine arts curriculum. And I told her to take biology because it would be easier than chemistry for her. And so I was telling her who not to take and who to try to take based on their teaching styles. But that has always brought me to this question of, do we really need to have classes for non-majors versus classes for majors? Is it really that big of a difference? And so I was really excited when I found this article, partly because it was written by my undergrad, or my master's advisor, and partly because it integrated video, which is something I'd like to do in a classroom. But it looked at non-majors, at science non-majors, and it was by Ike and King, and they concluded that non-majors preferred a higher quality, shorter video to a longer video. Well, who wouldn't like that? But that if it was related to the content, that helped the students because it gave them a visual of what was going on. They could see the concept and hear about it, and it also gave them something concrete to build off of. So a lot of times, non-science majors are really not any different than a lot of science majors that we have now because of No Child Left Behind, but they feel more inadequate, they don't feel prepared, maybe they didn't have to take as hard a science in high school, or they took science in high school but maybe they slept through it, whatever reasoning they have, they don't feel confident with their science knowledge. And so the video clips kind of help to give the teachers something to build off of and to give them some type of concrete way to teach the nature of science and to also teach science literacy and concepts that are a little bit more than just, hey, this is science class. Because a lot of times with the non-science majors, you only have one chance to reach them, and that is the chance that they're in that general science class that they have to take to satisfy their core, to get their degree. So a lot of times these are done as large lectures. The study that Ike did, the class was 242 students, and that was one section of the class. The article referenced that about 900 students a semester go through the concepts of science class that was used in this study. So the large lecture doesn't really provide much, except it does provide a chance for live demonstrations, and so that's why they integrated the videos there. Online classes present their own slate of problems, because if you're not very motivated to do the online class, or if you don't understand science in the first place, your motivation is going to be, hey Google, help me find this answer, rather than actually building off of your prior knowledge. So those were all kind of concerns that they had going into this, and why they decided to use the videos to try to help students with more knowledge. So the big takeaways for me were that you need to make science more inquiry-based and less lecture-oriented, because that's more fun for everybody. It's easier if you can get up and do something. Integrate technology and social media to reach the current generation of students where they are. If you can convince a student it's okay to tweet you a question in the lecture while they've got their phone out anyway, you might be able to help them bridge the gap between that understanding. Be willing to innovate, be willing to try something a little bit different that you've never tried before. Videos may help build a foundation for knowledge by providing both audio and visual content in a large lecture-style class, and also by providing the ability to maybe show a snow leopard, or show a raindrop forming. That's something that you can't do with a picture in a lecture. Labs are important because they're hands-on activities and they teach skills to spark engagement and to build real-world learning. They also give you a chance to show how things are actually done in research labs so that students have an idea of what goes on behind the scenes. So what did I do to change my project? Well, I just completely removed the family tree option. I felt like that might be asking a little bit too much, and there might be privacy concerns students might have about that, and that just kind of gave me a little bit more to focus on. So what I did was I expanded the remaining genetics disorder option to include the option for students to work individually, for those who prefer that, or to work as a cooperative group. I wanted them to be able to have that experience if they wanted to work with each other, especially for those who might not be science literate. I included a component for an individual reflection, and I went into a lot of detail about what I wanted them to reflect on in the project itself, that they would turn in not as part of their poster or video or PowerPoint presentation, but as a separate Word document that would be graded, where I would have access to it, but they would not have to present that part if that made them uncomfortable. And I changed it so that the video, they had the choice to make the PowerPoint, the poster, or the video to give them a feeling of choice and to hopefully also foster some creativity. And I gave this a 2-week frame, 2-week time limit for the project for its completion. And then I forgot to write this on the slide, but I also added a social media component so that they would be actually sharing with a Facebook group or Twitter account things that they had learned during the project. I also added instructor goals to the project because I wanted the students to realize that this was really a community effort, and I was hoping to learn as much from them as I was expecting them to learn from the project. And I included a checklist of documents for the students that they needed to turn in to make sure that they got everything, just to kind of help them coast along with that. And included a section to help them tie the genetics project to biology as a whole, sort of like the Lincoln idea. But it's a little bit different than that because I'm focusing mainly on the science part, not the literature part at this point. And then there were a few research questions that I came up with that might be good to consider later on. Is there really a difference between science majors and non-science majors in the way that they learn in an introductory class? So like your chemistry 101 or your physics 1, is that really different for majors and non-majors? Are professionally produced videos or student-produced videos more effective in helping teach scientific concepts? I'm kind of interested in that because I really think that you don't learn something until you have to teach it yourself. And so I kind of think that people enjoy watching other people. I mean, all we have to do is look at the reality shows to find out how much people like watching unscripted. So I don't know how you would frame that and how you'd actually research that, but that's a question I thought of. And are wet labs more effective than computer-based modules in giving students needed scientific skills? I have taught both wet lab, which means there's actually stuff, you're getting your hands dirty, you're actually doing the skill, versus computer modules. And I know what I prefer, but I want to know which one is more effective, or if there is a difference in effectiveness for the students. And then, would students be more willing to take introductory science classes, even if they had to take 2 classes instead of 1 class, if the class size was smaller and if it was more inquiry-based than traditional lectures? And then, what types of training do science faculty members need to help them teach in a more engaging way?